President Trump meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Ukrainian President Zelensky at the White House today as the U.S. enters fresh negotiations with Iran. The president said there's a good chance they make a deal, but if not, it will get a lot worse for Iran.
This is actually a good time to make a deal for them. If I go back and finish up the job, as some people would like, with the bridges, with the very easy. I could take out most of their bridges in less than an hour. I think we have a very strong position right now. They know I'm going to do that if they don't make a deal. The bridges are going to be gone.
So, David, what do you think? What are markets telling you? What are investors telling you about how they're reading all this with Iran right now?
I mean, is there anything clearer than the answer to this question? The markets have looked through this for months now. You have seen higher volatility in bond yields, in the dollar, but mostly in WTI crude. However, they basically believe it's going to end. There's no question that the president doesn't want ground troops. There's no question that they don't want the escalation. The threats to tonight we're going to end their civilization and then the next day we're back in a ceasefire. Markets just don't even care. Yeah. They completely shrug it off. Markets are far more focused on AI, Capex concerns, on the Fed, on earnings season. Markets are caring about that. They're not caring about what's happening in Iran.
The markets may not care, David, but that doesn't mean there aren't issues to care about there, right? Markets take a particular perspective on it. We've been hashing around, is a deal worth pursuing? And Kevin Roberts in the first hour said any talk of a deal is always good talk because it's a contrast to the ground troops. But I'm curious if you feel as strongly as he does about that. He didn't like finish the job in terms of go in and perhaps with ground troops, maybe not, but make a big offensive. What do you think about
it's interesting that originally, remember, it was right up until fairly recently, it was Iran that was considered the ones that were always using negotiations as a hedge, a phony hedge, when they, in fact, were still working on nuclear. To what extent do you wonder whether Donald Trump himself is now using the talks as a hedge? The real stuff is what happens on the ground in Iran when he attacks them. And sometimes I'm just wondering how much he is playing them along, whether his plans don't continue to be make it impossible for them not only to reconstruct anytime soon a nuclear program, but to reconstruct any kind of offensive program, whether it's against the Strait, whether it's against the Houthis, whether it's against Hezbollah. I mean, the people of Lebanon. I think this meeting that he arranged with the president of Lebanon was extremely important because, first of all, it shows the hypocrisy of the left in this country that are always talking about colonization being bad, and that's why they're against Israel. Well, what is colonization if not a country 1,000 miles from Lebanon controlling what happens in Lebanon rather than the Lebanese president of Lebanon? If you're against colonialism, you have to favor those talks. What Donald Trump is doing to rearrange the Middle East, it's part of his legacy. He believes that if it happens to interfere with the midterm, so be it. He's going to do it because it's going to make the world a safer place to live in, not only for the Iranian people, not only for the people around Iran, but for the entire Middle East and therefore for the entire world.
Let me weave Zelensky in here, if I might. We sat at this desk not long ago and watched a quite interesting meeting in the Oval Office with Zelensky and Trump and J.D. Vance. And that
you're talking about the smackdown.
The smackdown. Thank you. We are not in a smackdown world anymore. President Trump seems to have warmed to Zelensky. Some say it's because President Trump likes winners. Okay, but I think that's said in sort of a superficial way. But is it the case that Zelensky has proven something about Ukraine's cause, Russia's position, and America's interest in the globe that maybe the president and none of us could see earlier on in this conflict?
I think that's possible. I also think that he's behaving better. You know, President Trump is his own good cop, bad cop. He's bad cop when he thinks that you need a smackdown, and then he's good cop when, you know, you're working better with the group. And so I think that's partially what's happening right now. But I think the Ukraine piece of this is very important because of the Russia piece of this, which then directly ties back to the Middle East and the politics that we're dealing with, in the sense that Iran is being backed by those around the world who are not friends of America. And I believe that includes Russia and it includes China. Now, not fully backed. Iran is bad enough as an actor on its own. But I definitely think during this conflict, it's received a helping hand from both of those parties. And so there is an interest here right now, the president's interest in working with Zelensky to defeat Russia and not making that a sort of top line issue right now, but doing it slightly more under the radar as he's combating the issues in the Middle East and as he's combating China. Remember, he has taken on a lot here.
Right.
And I'll just add to what David was saying, because I have the same school of thought, which is this is part of the president's legacy, and it's not only through the mechanisms that we're seeing right now with respect to bringing Iran down, but I believe he wants to expand the Abraham Accords. The immediate players in the region were the UAE and Bahrain, but to get the Saudis to potentially think about joining and to get other countries on his side in that regard and on the side of Israel, because when you create an alliance like that, if you can take down the Iran regime, the threat of another rogue regime rising up is less severe. And so I think he's trying to do a number of incredibly difficult things, and we'll watch it all play out.
David, Bonson made the point that markets have looked through this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a good stat for you.
But I wonder, are consumers or the broader market looking through it? Mercifully, you did not show me a consumer sentiment chart earlier, and I appreciate that, and I am not inviting one now. But I am throwing the ball to you on kind of how does the broader economy, actors in that economy, are they tiring of this? Are they regaining strength? Where are they, Taylor?
The only reason I didn't do consumer confidence charts because the only person who hates him more than you is David Bonson, and I didn't want to piss off our guest. Look, I spoke with Mark Thiessen over the weekend, former speechwriter, and he had a good point. He kind of looked at me and he said, if Americans can't handle $4 a gallon gas, then we're not the great superpower of the world that we thought we were. And I just kind of let that moment sit with me, and I thought, I think you're right. If we don't have the ability to withstand a little bit of something for long-term peace and prosperity, then I don't know if I can call myself the greatest superpower. I don't know. Food for thought. We'll let that think. On that note of the consumer, Unleash Prosperity put out a good note. 80% of the inflation we still feel today is Biden. 19.5% to 20% is indeed from Trump, but still the majority of that is still from the Biden years. But consumers don't care.
I just don't know
what they care about is my prices are up 30% since 2019, and I need you to fix it. And so for that reason, I really do feel for the consumer. I feel for the people who are trying to fill up a diesel truck that's over $5, and I hear all of that. Folded into the markets, good stats. Maybe you'll disagree with me, maybe not. Equities often experience a summer dip ahead of the midterm election anyways. Within a couple of months after the election, the market tends to regain, and by 9 months later, it has never been lower in any of the 20 midterm cycles since World War II. So my part here is how much of this is also seasonality, where you get a little bit of a dip, and then there's a big rally 9 months later after the midterms, and the markets are always positive after. We'll see.
Food for thought. We'll leave it there before we get a consumer sentiment chart. We don't want one of those.